So up there it says Chief Digital Officer at Scripps Translational. Now you've done quite a few things. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Many people know you, but just in case they don't, why are you here on stage? What have you done in your life?
Well, I've got a very eclectic background. Started in bioengineering, went to law school, business school, and ended up Chief Operating Officer of the world's largest emergency medical services company, the largest medical group in the United States, MCare, and then ended up for 11 years at Qualcomm building a healthcare portfolio out of a chip company. And
which is pretty novel at the time, right?
And along the way, ended up collaborating with Eric Topol, and we managed to pull in about $500 million of research dollars. So,
yes, congratulations on that. That's amazing how much Scripps has been successful in doing that, right?
It's been great, and I know nothing about research, but somehow I can figure out how to pull the dollars together.
That's great. So talking of dollars, Apple, Google, Amazon, apparently they have dollars and they're interested. So can you predict for us or talk about what you think their version of healthcare might be in the next 10 years or so? What are they up to?
Well, fundamentally, these are all data companies. Yeah. And everybody appreciate what Richie had to say yesterday on own your own data. Mm-hmm. It got me thinking, you invited a lawyer to the meeting, and it got me thinking about, well, if I own my own data, and Richie has a platform that can assign a value to that data, and I go see a healthcare provider and a nonprofit, somebody owes me a tax deduction.
Yes.
I've contributed to.
Yes.
So then I thought, maybe there's a big class action lawsuit available, because I've been deprived of all my tax deductions for all my data. It's an interesting theory.
Yes.
As we develop what the value of data is, and here we have three companies, big names everybody recognizes, are all built on data. They all use data differently. Google uses data for search, and at the end of the day, no matter what you look at, what Google's activities are, whether it's the NIH, EHR projects, or anything else, I think you can all track it back to the fact that they're actually feeding their data mining engines for search. If you look at Amazon, it's obvious they're feeding the purchasing and supply chain mechanisms. And Apple uses data in a number of ways, but predominantly, ultimately, to provide for services and the developer community and app community. So all these companies are taking a different approach into healthcare that's really, really interesting. I think you're going to see Apple approach healthcare from the perspective of how do I develop a developer community that can take advantage of electronic health records in any number of ways. So it'll be up to the freedom of the developers to imagine what they can do when patients share their health records into a developer's app. That app might be, where do I find my drugs cheaper? That app might be, as I walk into a healthcare facility, it actually quickly scans for that reputation of that healthcare facility and gives me feedback. Or it might say, by the way, did you know, based on your health record that you're carrying on your phone, these are the clinical trials that you might qualify for. That's where Apple's going on a perspective. Google's going to go much more down the road of kind of changing the way we think about search in healthcare. Today, it's more about, I think I might have the flu. What are the symptoms of a flu? I self-analyze whether my symptoms match what the computer's telling me, and then I start doing searches on what should I do next. We're moving into a position where, as you can feed more data into the search engine, including physiological data, diagnostic data, et cetera, we're moving to what do I have as the search? Then what do I do? And then recommendations. Amazon's very much the same, but as they go down this road, and especially as they move into the retail pharmacy business, they'll be using that data, but more importantly, they're going to have a huge lab. As the Amazon Berkshire Chase deal moves forward and they end up managing 3 million lives, not just the million employees, but the 2 more million independents, they have quite a good-sized health plan. And as they move that health plan by, that's their lab. That's their lab for designing technology for reinventing the healthcare services delivery. It'll also be their lab for understanding and evaluating the effectiveness of drugs, which they will feed back on, through their pharmacy business. So we're going to be in a very, very data-rich environment from very, very large providers. And here's something I think is really important to think about. Most healthcare is designed around kind of inclusion, exclusion criteria. I don't just mean from a drug discovery perspective. I mean from does this patient present with something I can solve for on an inclusion-exclusion basis. Companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon don't use inclusion-exclusion. They're basically saying, what can I sell this customer? Broadly. Not how do I narrow down and say, what's the minimum amount of services I can provide? They're saying, what's the maximum number of services I provide, number one. Number two, most healthcare services of any kind, and healthcare companies, drug companies, et cetera, acquire one customer at a time. They build from zero and build up one customer at a time. These three companies already have hundreds of millions of customers, billions of customers. When Amazon Prime launches drug store services in the form of retail pharmacy, they'll have 110 million households with Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is going to solve the first fill problem. You all probably know the first fill problem is the 23% to 34% of prescriptions that are never filled, even though you paid all the money as drug companies to actually get the doctor to write the prescription. Amazon Prime is very likely to ask you all for permission to say, if we get the prescription, can we just go ahead and fill it and ship it to you? Maybe it'll be there before you get home. If they do that, any Amazon prescription where you tell the doctor, fill it at Amazon instead of CVS, is worth 20% more, minimum, to you as a pharma company in terms of sales, because it's more likely to be filled. So these are the kinds of things. They're going to scale very, very quickly in anything they do in healthcare because they already have the customer base, and they're trying to figure out the maximum number of services they can and goods they can provide.
So what happens to the legacy companies in pharmacy and insurance and all that?
Well, when Amazon announced, or when people figured out they were actually getting into the retail pharmacy business, you saw the stock prices of all the retail pharmacies fall fairly significantly. Yep. I think, the Amazon represents convenience, and the other companies are going to start fighting back on the convenience. We're starting to see some like CVS offer delivery, et cetera. But I think, given back to what I said about that first fill problem, nobody else is solving that problem. If Amazon solves it, the pharma companies are going to be lining up at Amazon's door and saying, how can we help you? How can we help you get people to say Amazon instead of CVS or Walgreens?
So you mentioned the Amazon Berkshire Chase joint venture, and that could be a lab really, but do you have any other thoughts about it? How it might be different in any way? What are they doing exactly? Yeah,
so we can just follow the breadcrumbs right now in terms of what that health plan is likely to look at. But the obvious things are there's not going to be any paper involved. Your health plan is going to be on your phone. Most likely, not only, I'm talking about the membership card, et cetera, but I think you're going to see very, very rich navigation, concierge services, and telemedicine services available to you on your phone as your first point of entry. As people navigate through healthcare, remember, healthcare is not anything people want, it's something they need. That nobody goes out and says, I have a list of things I want from healthcare. They only have a need. And when the need comes up, they're basically repetitively answering the question, what do I do next? If Amazon can provide good concierge information and telemedicine services on what they can do next, they can then drive and manage to a very narrow network. In the pharma business, that means narrow formulary. In the services side, that means narrow group of hospitals and doctors. But if they provide good concierge, trusted advice up front when you're answering the question, what do I do next, it will be acceptable to the members to actually funnel into a narrow network. And in doing so, they can cut their costs by about 30% on operating costs, which will be obviously a huge impact on the cost structure. I also believe they're going to do a couple of other things. I think they're likely to allow their members to go outside of the network. They'll just reimburse what they would otherwise reimburse. But more importantly, I think they're very likely to allow members to go out and find and price their own services. So if I can find a CT scan for cash at $300 and the network price is $1,350 and the MSRP price is $2,300, I think they'll split the difference between the network price and the cash price with their 3 million members. And in doing so, they'll begin to build a process where the membership is repricing healthcare. They're not going to do it because they just think it's a good idea to save the extra money of the member. They're going to do it as a mechanism of repricing healthcare. So these are some of the things you're going to think about, and the whole thing will be essentially a lab for additional services. They're already in DME services. They're already in physician office supply services. So they continue to expand. You're going to see Amazon telemedicine services. These are my predictions. But you're going to be able to click to telemedicine. You're going to be able to click to medical imaging. You're going to be able to buy an MRI or a CT scan and schedule it on Amazon. And the list will go on and on and on. So they're going to reinvent that purchasing and access process in many, many, many ways.
Do you have any other predictions for the next 10 years for us?
Well, if they're successful and they cut their costs by 30%, which is I think they will, you're going to see a lot of Fortune 500 companies knocking on their doors saying, how do we join you? And they're very likely over the course of the next 10 years to become the largest insurer made up of self-insured employers in the country.
Don, you're always interesting. I'm sure we could ask you 50 more questions, but Don's around, so I'm sure if you have lots of questions for him, he's around to chat to you. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.